The NFC North's landscape has changed quite a bit. Let's Talk Lions. Welcome back to an all-new episode here at Let's Talk Lions. My name is Jay. Thank you for hanging out. Look, man, the NFC North has shifted. The planes, the tectonic plates underneath us are changing. Do I know a thing about tectonic plates? No. Other than what I remember from the third grade, thank you, Mrs. McAvoy. The Lions have brought in a few players, a couple key players that I think are going to make this team that much better, beginning with DJ Reader and Carlton Davis. Those two guys, two huge pickups coming here to Detroit. Also snagging Amik Robertson, as we have talked about, and Edge Davenport from Minnesota, who played with New Orleans for quite some time, 5 years, I believe. Long story short, the Lions are bringing in these guys. Brad Holmes is following the mold in which he has created since the beginning of his tenure. And that is finding guys with huge upside, but are also injured or suffering some sort of injury that we know of. And if they pan out, they're going to pan out in the greatest of ways. If they don't, it's going to be Emmanuel Moseley 2.0, which is really sad. Yeah, it's kind of the worst. So, but hey, bringing back Emmanuel Moseley, we'll see what happens there on another one-year deal. We have lost CJ Gardner-Johnson, which to me, it's fine. It's okay. You know, I think the guy played like a dog. He was incredible for the 2 games we saw him. He just, by incredible, I think his heart, right? Like the passion was there. The one thing about him that I noticed from day one was he didn't really fit the Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, humble but hungry feel. You know what I'm saying? Like CJ Gardner-Johnson kind of had that big talk to him, which, hey, listen, man, that's the competition, and I loved the fire. But, like, I think back to that San Francisco game when it's halftime and he's waving goodbye to San Fran fans, and I'm like, that's not who we are. That is not who we are. That is not the Detroit Lions that have been built by Campbell and Holmes. And so, like, to me, I'm like, okay, that's an okay loss. He goes back to Philly. Whatever. We only saw him for, 3 games, 4 games, maybe. It is what it is. We also lost Jonah Jackson. That one hits hard because we're looking at a top O-line that now suffers from that guard position. And we lost Chase Lucas to San Fran. So I think Chase Lucas is the first draft pick from Brad Holmes that we have lost to free agency. So, hey, it is what it is. Again, Holmes did what he does in free agency, finds the high potential, high upside guys who are suffering from some sort of injury or ailment or something going on that has pushed them to the curb, or maybe they've just dipped in their performance, and he sees a guy with a ton of upside that we're giving a second shot of redemption. DJ Reader with the quad injury, second quad injury. Carlton Davis, I don't believe he has finished a full season yet. So phenomenal players, right? Because DJ Reader was ranked, I believe, 10th overall, where you have Aleem McNeil, 8th overall on the line, stopping the run. There might be a game where we allow less than 15 yards rushed on us in a game this season if DJ Reader is out there and healthy, which is just, it's going to be wild. And I love that with that focus up front, that's going to allow our cornerbacks a little bit less pressure. I would say with Detroit's overall free agency signings and losses, the team has gotten slightly better, right? Like if we started here looking at this offseason, I feel like we just kind of went just upticked 1-2 points out of 100. If we're at an 85, we ticked up to an 87. It's kind of like where I'm at as an overall squad. That is, don't take those numbers to heart. Calm down. That was just the first numbers off my head. Everybody just, some of the position groups have gotten far better just through free agency, and that's cornerback and D-line. Straight up. I think they've gotten far better with those 2 signings. DJ Reader is a massive signing. Carlton Davis is a huge signing. Those 2 guys, that upticks our cornerback and our D-line position groups that much more in a phenomenal way. But at the same time, losing Jonah Jackson, that's a tough loss. I know we re-signed Graham Glasgow, but man, we look at the amount of injuries that we sustained on the O-line last year. I don't know if we played with our starting combo more than 4 games. Started out like starting combo more than 4 games, maybe? We lost Big V immediately. So I don't even know, dude. That being said, it's like, yeah, we've gotten better, but we also suffered some losses. So that is kind of where I'm at. I think the Lions have gotten slightly better than we were last year. But when you take a second, you take a step back, and you start looking at the opposing squads in our division, Green Bay, Minnesota, and Chicago, they've all made some moves that are fascinating. Green Bay, for example, brings in Josh Jacobs, a huge signing for them. However, at the same moment, they lose Aaron Jones. And not only did they lose Aaron Jones, but who did they lose them to? We'll get into it. They also brought in Xavier McKinney, a guy that I was pretty high on coming into the free agency period. That was a guy where I was like, man, I'd love to bring him here. Safety, dude can ball out, has great numbers, has great production. So Green Bay bringing him in, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Good for Green Bay, not great for us. I think Green Bay has gotten better through this free agency quite a bit. Green Bay was pesky last year. You know, they were kind of like that frisky team that enters into the playoffs where you're like, man, they could make a run. And you look at them game 1, like Green Bay was a team that was just a menace. They were Dennis the friggin' Menace last year. And I think they have upgraded their squad from Dennis the Menace to maybe Wile E. Coyote, who ends up always losing, but boy has TNT at the ready. It's quite annoying. I do think that they have upgraded their squad as a whole. Maybe they're more of like a Yosemite Sam. And if you're under the age of 30, you probably have no idea who that is. Then you've got Minnesota, who went back wild this free agency. First and foremost, casting Kirk Cousins to the side, saying we no longer need you. Kirk Cousins heads to Atlanta. Very smart move by Kirk. Like, you look at the NFC South, and I'm like, my boy made the right move. Like, that guy made the right move. He went to a dead division and said, hey, I guess we can go to the playoffs if we really want to. Kirk Cousins moves on to Atlanta. He is no longer in Minnesota. Who does Minnesota bring in? Sam Darnold. Their GM claims he's not a bridge quarterback. I think he is. That's just me. He might not be a bridge quarterback to the GM, but I feel like to everybody else, we're looking at him like he is the bridge to Terabithia. And if you've seen the end of that movie, Minnesota, though, did beef up their defense a little bit. They went out and they got Van Ginkel from Miami, linebacker. Huge move. Great move by Minnesota. Gotta say, well done on that. But they didn't stop there. They also brought in Cashman from Houston, who had a great year last year. That is another solid move by the Vikings. As we talked about earlier with Green Bay, casting Aaron Jones or releasing Aaron Jones, right? Who goes out and gets him but Minnesota? So that's going to be weird to see him wrapped up in that disgusting purple, but it is what it is. Thank God Minnesota's lost. The Vikings lost Hunter. But yeah, them losing Hunter is a huge move. He was a guy who created a lot of hype, and I think the Lions kind of, were pushing the envelope, being like, oh, are we interested? I don't think Brad Holmes is ever going to be interested in a big ticket, big cap hitter. Right? He's not going for Trey Flowers for $90 million. God, remember that? Let that one sink in. Let that sink in just through the pores. It's like that movie Venom, right? Where Venom just gets into Tom Hardy's character, Eddie Brock. Just gets in there, a little poison. That's what that was. That's Trey Flowers. Really not worried about the rushing side of things in general, other than quarterbacks and their legs. That is the scariest thing. But that brings me to Chicago. And the Bears making the move to say, hey, we have a bag of Funyuns in the closet, and we don't really want to keep it in there anymore. Who wants the Funyuns? Who wants the Goldfish? Highly underrated snack, Goldfish. Oh, Justin Fields, go to Pittsburgh for what? It's like a 6th round conditional. I think it can be worth. I think it's worth. Maybe it was a 4th round. Doesn't matter. How disrespectful is that, man? They just said, we don't care about this guy. We are getting ready for Caleb Williams. That is where the Bears are going. And quite frankly, I'm very thankful for it. Even if it's just a short-term thankfulness, right? Even if it's just short term. Because when I look at the Bears, when I look at that squad and what Justin Fields used to do to us, he would scramble for roughly 628 yards a game on us. He said, you guys have linebackers? Because I haven't seen them all game. Beeline down the field. Made our D-line look terrible. We could not tackle the young man. I could not be more thankful that Chicago said, we don't care about him. And they casted him to the curb like he was nothing but an old couch. Pittsburgh, they got Russ and Justin Fields. I don't know what's going on there. That's wild. That's a rodeo. All I know is that the NFC North is looking like the wild, wild North these days. And I can't quite wrap my mind around it, but as I said, the ground beneath us is shifting. I think Minnesota is going to be a lot better for it. I do believe that the Lions are going to battle out Green Bay. It's going to be the Lions and Green Bay going for the division this season. However, Minnesota could easily slip in there. It all depends on, do they draft a QB? I think they're, 12th or 13th in the draft? Do they try to move up, snag a QB? Who is it? I don't think Sam Darnold is the guy. But hey, what's his name? That Mitch Trubisky lookalike, what was his name for Minnesota? He gave us the runaround. Was it Mullins? Nick Mullins, right? Guy gave us the runaround this year. So who knows? Maybe Sam Darnold shows up like he did that week 1 Jets-Lions here at Ford Field back in 2018. All I know is the NFC North is changing beneath us. The draft is where Brad Holmes hits a homer pretty much every time. Right? Free agency is this time in which Lions fans, we get kind of hyped up, myself included. Really, I am, hyped up. Like, who are we going to get? Who are we going to pull in? Are we going to go get that guy? And it never goes the way I anticipate or even truly love. I trust it because I trust Brad Holmes when it comes to the draft. That's where I even look at the Bears. The Bears are positioning themselves for the draft. They brought in Keenan Allen, right? Wide receiver. Like, that's a huge move. But as a whole, I'm like, okay, they didn't care about the free agency, it looks like, too much. It's all about the draft. And that's where I see Brad Holmes. That's where I see him going. Everything really comes down to that draft. Who are the guys he's going to go get? It kind of opens up a plethora of options. I really see us dropping back from 29 into the second round. We'll see, though. I'm not Brad Holmes, and thank God I'm not, because the stress that poor man has to take on in his life. Meanwhile, I'm here just making little fake wooden tables. This is just the Mod Podge on top. Don't worry, I'm going to paint them brown. We're going to add some texture to them. I got some brick walls going on over here. But long story short, my stress levels, not high.